Hello, everybody. It's Donna Cravata, and we are back for another Real 50 Over 50 interview. And today our guest is Laurie Thibert.
Yep.
Okay. She's a business leader, relationship development specialist, and founder of Aligned Insights Matter. She's the author of the best-selling book, The CATR Theory, The Four Legs of Successful Personal and Professional Relationships. And Laurie believes that the relationship drives business success, but when alignment slips and communication breaks down, trust fades and growth becomes harder to sustain. She spent 3 decades helping leaders building their relational intelligence, or RQ, and true alignment so their teams work together with trust, respect, and purpose because stronger relationships bring stronger results. It all comes together through her Cater Your Relationships playbook. And we are going to talk about all kinds of interesting things today. So if you've got any comments, put them in the chat and we'll talk about them. If you're listening on the replay, do the same and tag us, and we will come back and keep this conversation going because it's going to be a good one. Welcome, Laurie.
Thank you so much, Donna. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the invitation to join you today.
So let's get right into it. Let's talk about relationships.
It's my favorite topic because the beautiful thing about relationships is it impacts every area of our life, right? Whether it's our family, our friends, in the work environment, and even in the work environment, it's not just about relationships with our customers. And I think that's the default that a lot of leaders go to. It's actually the relationships with our teams, how the individuals work together, how the departments work together, how the board of directors works with the executive leadership team, and then also with our customers, our vendors, and out within the greater community. So relationships touch every aspect of our life.
Yeah.
The question is, where do we ever learn how to have healthy relationships? We go to school to learn our ABCs to read and write. We also at school learn our numbers, 1, 2, 3s, to be able to do math, engineering, all sorts of things like that. Where do we ever learn how to create, nurture, and sustain healthy relationships? Quite often, it's at home or at school from our teachers, our peers, etc. Where did they learn them, though? Quite often we're learning it from people that may have never been taught how to be able to make the connections. But then when we start to have some of the connections that feel like they're cracking or starting to break down, how do we identify what is at play and how do we fix it? So yes, I could talk about this all day long because it's such a robust topic.
I can too, because I take a whole other spin on this because I, for me, it's not just people, of course, it's relationships with people, but with me, it's relationships with your content and the tools that you use.
Great
And
point.
it's not one-sided. AI has just brought an entirely new dimension to that.
Yes, it has. And you and I were just speaking both a little while ago, as well as in earlier conversations about that whole dynamic between AI, our relationship to AI, what AI can do or not do, and then the whole people component alongside that. It's a robust topic. And the beautiful thing is that in all of the experience that I've had as a relationship development specialist, I've come to realize that it doesn't have to be near as complicated as we have a tendency to make it. When we understand kind of the recipe of what's at play in how to create it well, and then how to fix it as we go along.
It mirrors what you bring.
Yes.
So,
And you have spoken about that also, is that mirroring, right? Especially in the technology side when you're talking about AI. I know that's an area that you specialize in quite a bit. May I ask, what is one or two of the biggest things that you've learned in this space regarding relationships and the AI or business sense?
AI is essentially like an infinite sized word jumble. It's just all of these words that were fed into this system. So it can try to be a human being and have all of this information, but it wasn't formed into anything. So,
Mhm.
you have to bring that formation to it. And what gets me excited about that is the same thing. There is no form. So, you know, most people don't spend the time to think first what they actually want this tool to do for them. They just go start barking commands at it. And just as you cannot get any successful results if you do that with a human being, you're not going to get successful results if you do that with this tool. Um, but and the other thing that happens too is, because they're not bringing the context of what they're really searching for, um, they get back results that's just skimming the top, and
Mhm.
that's not the good stuff. To get to the good stuff, you have to push it and you have to, just as when you're working with human beings, you have to cultivate them and coach them and teach them. I mean, people do not come out of school having the skills that they need to be successful at whatever role they're stepping into. They learn through mentors, they learn through working, they learn through experience, they learn through failure. And the same thing has to happen with the relationship with these tools. I mean, and the only way to really learn how to do this is to put your hands on the keyboard and do it, because everyone has an individual relationship with this. Like, you can learn how to have relationships with people by reading books and listening to podcasts. But as soon as you start, interacting in real life, that all flies out the window. It's just information.
Well, it's interesting. Someone, an executive that I'm close to, told me one time, he said, Laurie, you need to understand that information is only as valuable as when it can be recalled in the moment that it's needed. Right.
Yes.
So, to your point, we can have all these tools that we have in books or lectures, conferences, even personal relationship conversations, etc. The fact is that when we're in the moment, are we going to be able to rely on that, recalling that information to use it at that point in time? And likewise with our engagement, whether it's AI or anything else,
Mhm.
it's that mindful intention of what is it that we're putting into it for what it is that we're going to get out of it.
Exactly.
And
And
that's, go ahead.
you got to think of that first.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're diving right into the book that I wrote. It's called The CATR Theory. And the reason that I called it that is because when we look at, for example, if we want to have a very positive experience for our friends and family, and we're having a dinner party, we most often will cater it to your point because we want to put extra intention into what's being created for what we're going to get out of it, what the positive experiences that everyone would have. If we take that same concept into the personal relationships that we have and we give it extra mindful intention, then for everyone to have a very positive experience, then there's a good chance that what comes out of that is much more robust, much more positive in what's created, because it's through that mindful connection and really pouring into what it is that we want to have a healthy connection with, and to see what's created from that. And the really beautiful thing is it often doesn't have to be hard.
No, it doesn't. It needs, uh, I think there's a couple of elements that work across the board, that most people just don't do because they're too busy or they're, thinking of something else. I think in most cases it's not bad intention in any way. It's just, they just don't do it. Um, First, there's that context piece. You've got to bring the context. There's
Mhm.
the listening,
Mhm.
listening deeply. Like, if you want to know about your audience, listen to them first. But what people will do is they'll hire somebody else to tell them who their audience is. But it's all right there. I mean, we have an abundance of information available to us. I mean, we can get this information on our own in many cases. And then, then if we choose to work with a coach, or we choose to work with or get some further learning or education in some field, we can come to that way more informed and just have an entirely different experience.
I agree with that. It starts in the framework that I share, and again, this is from 30 years experience that it was created, is the power of presence,
Yeah.
right? Being just really focused on what is at play in order to listen to learn instead of
Hmm.
listening to speak.
Hmm.
And from there, being intentional about how it is that we're engaging. So it's interesting because where my framework came from was after having about 20 years in corporate experience from account management, corporate accounts, very high level national accounts. Um, and from there, I became part owner of a couple of different startup companies and was on a couple of philanthropic boards. I learned a lot about some pretty complex relationships and how to navigate them. But it wasn't until I adopted my son. I met him over in Ghana, and he was about 8 years old at the time. And this was very unexpected because I wasn't looking to adopt. We were over there working with water wells and with schools. And I met this little one whose parents had died, and I couldn't stop thinking about him and decided to be his mom. So, much like yourself as a solo parent, it was a whole journey of learning this whole other level of engagement.
Hmm.
And it was through those dynamics that it taught me the importance of being present and the
Yeah.
importance of listening.
And you were also, you have the complexity of cultural differences and grief, and I'm sure fear.
Oh yes, trauma. He went through some really major things before we met at such a young age, and to the point that he almost died from it. So when he came here, he was dealing with about 20 other things that children
Mhm.
his age were not dealing with, and being able to navigate all of that. And even with the help of therapists, being a relationship specialist, we couldn't figure it out for about 4 years.
Yeah.
And I kept looking at what is it I need to change? What is it I need to do different? And again, to tie it back into any relationship that we have, whether it's what we're putting into AI and what it is that we're getting back, it's like, what is it I need to shift in the prompt here
Yeah.
for what it is that we get out on the other side? And we couldn't quite figure it out until it finally landed. And by the time he was about 15, 16, because he didn't come here until, we don't know his exact birth date, but somewhere between 11 and 12. So it was about 16 when things finally landed. And from there, just what's been created between the two of us has been incredibly robust.
Hmm.
Though it was from that and from what all we went through that I realized I needed to figure out a framework to help him to understand how relationships are developed.
Yeah.
And it carried over then during his high school years. We had 6 other teenagers that lived with us anywhere from 2 months to 2 years, just friends of his going through really big things that
Hmm.
needed support. And so we created this framework. And the analogy I always used is that a relationship is like a table with 4 strong legs. And when that table is strong, you can stand on it and dance on it and have your friends and family dance on it with you. The second that one of those legs cracks, though, everything's at risk for failing. So the 4 legs are the CATR, the CATR, communication. Communication is the anchor leg in any relationship. And it has some of those qualities we were just talking about. In addition to listening to learn and be the power of presence and the power of positivity, it also has the fundamental characteristics of it. Is it honest data that we're putting in, right? Are we being fully honest? Are we open and willing to communicate? Are we being transparent, or are we cutting corners? Are we being accepting of one another with where it is that we're at and the wholeness of our humanness, or are we throwing expectations on each other? And being able to be accepting with agreements. But here's the 2 big ones that I think that we're missing in our society right now. One is the having respectful tone in our conversations, especially when it's hard. We can be respectful all day long until it gets hard, and somehow that kind of gets tossed out the window. And the other piece is the thoughtfulness. being thoughtful about how the other person is receiving it, as opposed to just having it be a situation where we just come and yes, I go under the guise of I was being honest and open and transparent, and this is my authentic truth, and you need to hear what I have to say, and it becomes a dump, as
Yeah.
opposed to caring about how the other person receives it. You know, whether it's in technology or in any other aspect, when we're not being thoughtful about what the dynamics are actually at play, then we're not really engaging in the relationship. We're just throwing stuff out there from our own space. But
Yeah.
when that communication, go ahead.
That can't be accepted in many cases. Like it can't be taken in.
Well, exactly, because we may not pause to think about how it's being received.
Hmm.
And I know we're toggling back and forth here between that concept, even like how we're engaging with technology, whether it's AI or elsewhere, is when we're not truly thinking about how is whatever the technology going to respond based on the input, then we're not being you're not being effective in how it is that you're relating. So
Yeah.
any relationship, personally or professionally, if we're not being thoughtful about how the other person may be receiving this, then we're going to miss the mark.
Hmm.
So being thoughtful is those characteristics we were just speaking about are how we make that communication leg really strong. And then the second leg is accountability, that we show up and we do what we say we're going to do on time, and we do it well, both from the aspect of what and how we've agreed to communicate, though also our actions. And we can only renegotiate that a couple of times, or the third and fourth leg won't develop. We can't build trust if we're not consistent in our accountability. Though when communication and accountability legs are both really strong, the trust leg has a chance to form.
Hmm.
And in that, it doesn't mean that we're going to agree on everything all the time. We can agree to disagree. The key is, though, that we need to create a safe space for the communication to occur so that we can have those difficult conversations. And when that trust leg is strong, over time, the fourth leg will develop, and that's respect for each other. Because when we respect each other and when we have that strong bond there, because we care about each other and we care about the success of the relationship, we're going to have each other's back pretty much no matter what goes down, because we want to see each other succeed, as long as two things don't happen. The first is that what's being asked of us doesn't violate our core values. And the second, what's being asked of us is not beyond what we're able or willing to give. And if those two things haven't been met, then we're going to show up and do the best we can within what we're able to do. This dialogue, even with the AI piece, is like our AI is going to do what it can do based on the prompts that it's been given, but there's going to come a point that it can't do it, right? It's beyond what it's able or willing to do. So,
Well, what's interesting is it very rarely will come back and tell you it can't do it. It just starts to make things up, and it does it in a very believable way. So it's very easy to go far, far off course quickly.
it's interesting that you say that, because if we look at our human relationships, how often does that happen there
A
too,
lot, yeah.
right?
I mean, yeah, and like I said before, I think people do this with good intention. I
Mm-hmm.
think, for the most part, they're not showing up, like the evil villain in the story. They just, they don't have um, the information to do this. That's why I think that what we're both doing is really important because, I mean, I think both in human relationships and in technology-based relationships, we're at like the starting point of the way things will be done for who knows how long to come.
I agree. It is something that's important when we're looking at both dynamics, from what you're doing and from what I'm doing, is that some of the data last year out of MIT, and it was the state of AI in business, and it was talking about that technology is only 20% of the AI transformation.
Hmm.
That other 80% is the human element, and that's the people, the processes, the cultures, and to your point, like how are we engaging with it? And here's a really interesting thing. So I learned this last fall when I was going through the Yale Women's Leadership Program. And it's the whole concept of relational intelligence, RQ. And I had been teaching in this arena for about 10 years, this concept of the CATR theory. I had no idea that it falls into this category of relational intelligence and high relational intelligence at that. And the reason being is that when we're looking at relational intelligence, so what is RQ? So we know what IQ is, right? That's measuring our intellect. And EQ is having an understanding of my emotions and potentially the other person's emotions and how to be able to connect and navigate the connection in those moments. Relational intelligence, or RQ, is the next level. It's both the capacity and the capability to create, nurture, and sustain connections, especially in complex environments. So it's how do we understand, navigate, and elevate those connections, even when it's complex. That's what we as humans can do. And so and especially when we look at the Society for Human Resources Management, that's showing that the US businesses are losing $2 billion a day, actually over $2 billion a day, due to incivility. It's rudeness, terse emails, the snippy comments that happen in the hallways. And to our point of something we were talking about just prior to when we came online, is that in those business cultures, what happens is when those incivility instances happen, people pull back and they don't engage.
Oh, they don't feel safe.
Exactly. And our businesses pay it at every level, because we've got, not only the costs of decreased engagement, lack of collaboration, it's impacting the profitabilities of our company, and it's also navigating the turnover, higher levels of turnover. And even the people that do stay, it doesn't mean that they're going to engage.
Yeah.
And we can also see it out in our personal lives, right? Like, how does it play out in our personal lives?
Yeah.
Then
you only hear the voices of a small percentage of people.
Yes. So being able to, what the relational intelligence data shows, and a lot of this, there's several institutions across the US that have research in this area of relational intelligence. One of the things that they show is that the businesses that increase kindness and compassion in their culture, there's a direct correlation to profitability, because the collaboration increases, the engagement increases when we've got those safe points of connection, even when it's hard. So your profitability increases while those expenses decrease. So it's hitting both ends of your profit and loss statement. And then out in our personal lives as well, when we think about how can we increase our kindness and our compassion, even when it's difficult, to support those aspects of connection, whether it's with our children, whether it's with our spouses or our friends or our family members, and they may see things different than how we do. Like, how do we foster that connection?
That's a challenging one.
It can be, definitely.
Yeah, because then there are generational layers of dysfunction that show up, not just what's happening today.
Well, one of the things that I've built into the CATR theory, and the reason that I'm speaking to that a little bit extra today, is because people are looking for support and being able to just help them know that this is out there. One of the aspects of the CATR theory is that when we feel the cracks occur in the legs of the table or in the legs of the relationship, how do we identify it and how do we fix it? And because these 4 legs are not independent, they're interdependent, they build upon each other. So just like they build upon each other, we can, if you're feeling a crack occur in the respect, start at the 4th leg and work your way backwards until you can find where the crack occurred so that you can fix it. Because if something happened in the respect leg, then something probably happened in the trust leg.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they both would be strong.
Yeah.
And if something happened in the trust leg and you're not sure what it is, go back to the accountability leg.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are it's in one of two things. It's either in the actions or the communication.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's in the actions, we work together to identify it, take ownership for my part in it, work together to be able to get that aspect strong again. If it's communication, we go back to the communication leg and then run it through the different aspects that we were talking about earlier to say, okay, what cracked here? Because we can be doing well in a lot of those areas and have a crack in one or two of them. But if we are being mindful, to your point, right? Being the importance of being mindful for what we're putting, what is our input here, so that we can figure out what do we need to tweak in order to keep that strong so that the whole experience can be strong.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can do that, and sometimes we'll think about, some of the stories with this, there's been times where I'm in a relationship, let's say with a best friend or colleague, and I'll go into the experience thinking, okay, I'm here for them, I'm showing up, I'm doing what they're asking of me, and then something doesn't feel good, and I'm left feeling like they're mad at me, and I don't know what I did, and being able to run it through that and say, oh, I cracked this leg without even realizing it, right? I wasn't kind in this moment because I was busy.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't as thoughtful that they needed something different than what I showed up. And I forgot to ask them what it was they needed from me. So whether maybe it's with my son and my mom hat came on and I started giving advice when that's not what he was looking for.
Yeah. Or asking for.
Or asking for, exactly. So sometimes I need to take ownership for, I was the one that cracked it. So,
Mm-hmm.
So how can I fix this if this person is important to me?
So now when you're working with a group, or maybe it's a personal situation, and you've got most of the group willing to engage in this method, but there's an outlier that is not interested. How do you bridge that?
Well, I'll give you an example. So I've done a number of workshops over these last couple of weeks. And one of the premises is, because we always look, when we're doing this work, we look at what feels good to us. Like when we think about relationships, we feel about what feels healthy in a relationship to me, right? I can identify the relationships where I get so excited that I can't wait to connect with them. So I can identify those aspects. So I can know for myself what works for me in relationship. Though we also then think about a relationship that doesn't work for me, that things are cracked. And I always extend the invitation to reflect on that for yourself. And when we have group dialogue, I'm not forcing anyone. I'm not going to call on anyone and call out. So there was recently an experience where I'm holding that boundary, and the rest of the group started calling out this person to want them to engage. And what I would offer is that we need to allow them the space to step into this when they're ready.
Mm-hmm.
If the rest of the team is gaining value, what's going to happen is that those relationships are going to start to get stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And one of two things will happen is that the other person may choose to no longer be part of the team, right? Because of the way that they engage, and that they choose to not be so engaging as opposed to being part of the solution of what's working. Or maybe in our own home environment, we look at what is it this person needs and how can we meet them in the middle so that they feel value, or they can understand the value of what's being created. And most of the time, what I've seen is that it might take a little while, but eventually they come in to want to engage because they want healthier relationships in their life, and they can see this working for other people.
Yeah.
The more that we try to force them, though, it's like attempting to get a little one to eat food that they just are refusing to eat. However, there may be a point that you're able to create an environment that they start to say, oh, you know what? I want to taste that because everybody else is enjoying it. Now I want a taste of it too. as long as we are coming from the place of forcefulness, the higher likelihood that they're not going to want to engage. And that there's an aspect in my business framework that touches on, are you familiar with something called power versus force?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when we look at the layers of energy that are less than courage, shame, guilt, anger, all of that, those are all low levels of energy, and that's where forcefulness occurs. That's where resistance occurs. When we get up above courage into higher levels of acceptance, happiness, joy, peace, love, etc., all of those higher levels, reasoning, etc., that's where power occurs, and that's where people naturally want to move towards that. So when we can take away any of the shame, blame, guilt of the engagement of whether that person engages or not, it removes the forceful nature and allows for the resistance to not be there, such that when they're ready, they will generally, when we're moving into a higher level of positivity, a higher level of engagement, that's where the natural, it almost becomes like a magnet, because people want to
Mm.
engage when they're ready to come forward into whatever it is. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Because I mean, like I grew up in law firms, so
Huh?
you know, it's challenging human dynamic there. And you know, I always think of like how different scenarios or different theories would work there, and that's like the extreme case of the lower energy vibe.
I think in that instance, there's two things that tend to help people start to realize how powerful this is. One is that power versus force, when they can actually see the energetic scale. This is work by Dr. David Hawkins, and how they can measure energy, and they can see how low of energy it is. And if you look up the map of consciousness, it's kind of a complex map. It's got several columns. There's the two main columns are the ones that I look at. And one is that energetics space for what is the name of, shame, guilt,
Mm-hmm.
anger, desire, etc., courage, etc. And then the numerical value of the measurement of that energy. And the really interesting thing is that they're not units of one. That's to the power of that number. So you can see the difference of the power, like death is the lowest, where there's no energy, that's at 0. The next level up from that is shame, and that's at 20. But when
Mm-hmm.
you look at courage, and that's 200,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you go up higher, 350, 400, 500. Enlightenment is between 700 and 1,000. So that's to that power, not just incremental units of one. So
Mm-hmm.
helping us to understand, when I'm engaging with this person, what is the level that I am engaging with? And is it that forceful resistance, or is it actually powerful energy such that they want to move into it?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is just very briefly, it's something called the nurtured heart approach. And this is a way of engaging. Originally was designed by a man named Howard Glasser, out of Tucson. And he was the person that the Tucson Police Department would bring in to work with the juveniles that had been brought in. And he found that traditional levels of therapy and engagement, many of which he'd been trained in, didn't work. And he realized that the thing that did work was when, no matter how everything was going wrong, he would focus on what was going right in the moment. And
Yeah.
that's what you anchor into, and that's what you build upon. And sometimes it was as much as being able to say, you could be throwing that chair at me right now and you're not. And that shows me self-control. It shows me that you're keeping the agreement and personal responsibility. And or it could be that you could be stabbing me with that pencil right now and you're not. Again, it's showing me respect. It's showing me teamwork. It's showing me that you're keeping the agreement and being accountable to what we agreed, right? So when we speak to the positive qualities that we see within each other, then people start to identify the self-worth within them. And when that happens, when they start to understand their inner wealth, they don't have to bully others any longer to feel good about themselves. And so they stay and they get to a point where they start to understand the value of how good it makes them feel, especially when they can help someone else to feel good. So in the schools and the school districts where they use the nurtured heart approach, some of the most underperforming students or classrooms become the highest performing. Some of the most underperforming schools become some of the highest performing when they embrace this concept of the nurtured heart approach. And it's not just for children, it's for people at any level. So being able to, whether it's our colleagues, right, in some of our work environments or in our home, in our relationships, the more that we can focus on what's going right in the moment and be able to build upon that, it's how we start to heal so much of the hurt that is taking place. And we don't have to keep going to those low levels of energy of shame, blame, and guilt. Instead, we start lifting each other up and saying, okay, this may not have been perfect in this moment. We're going to focus on what is working, and we build upon that. And the last thing that I think is really important for us to at least touch base on is, how do we bridge the divides that are taking place in our society right now? And it's so the CATR theory in its simplest form, I've taught it with the teams that I've been on in personal situations for, again, almost 10 years before. It was actually my son that came to me and said, Mom, I need your voice out here, because he's now a couples coach. And he has about he's got 110,000 on TikTok and about 125,000 when he's adding in the other platforms. And a lot of what he's gotten his certification in the program that he went through, though a lot of what he's also learned has been through what we've learned together, right? And so he kept saying, Mom, I need your voice out here. And I had many professionals saying, Laurie, when are you going to write the CATR theory down? And so that's what I've done. But the simplest form is what we were talking about a few minutes ago. The 4 legs, how do we build it? And how do we diagnose it and repair? Start at the 4th leg and work your way backwards. There's another layer of this, though, too, because we've all been at a restaurant at a time or two, and the table is wobbling. And you're checking the legs, and the legs all seem to be fine, but it's the foundation underneath that's not solid. And so no matter how much you attempt to fix the legs, that's not where the problem is. And over time, we've realized there's a few things that need to be at play in order for the CATR theory to hold strong. And that's looking at what I call the 3 I's, or the foundational tenets. The first one is intent. Do we have good intent for each other and the success of the relationship? The second is interest. Do we have common interests or common core values upon which to build? Because if we don't have anything in common, we don't have anything to connect with. And the third, investment. Are we both invested in the success of the relationship? Now, when we're looking at relationships, whether it's a business relationship or a personal relationship, quite often at the beginning, those are solid. That's why we're jumping into the partnership. Over time, though, when cracks have occurred in the other areas of the relationship, those may have broken down. We may or may not have good intent for each other any longer. We may not have any common interests any longer, and we may not be invested any longer. And the piece that really to focus on when we're looking at division, that we have division in our relationships, in the workplace or in our personal lives, is we've got to get underneath the division to find the point of commonality. What do we have in common here that we could both agree on so that we can build together? So that's where the magic happens, because even I've got family members who see things politically very, very different than I do. We're both great people. We both are doing really great things in the world. And what we've needed to do is agree to disagree on how we get to an end result. But when we can get underneath all that and we focus on what we have in common, the issues that we both care about, that we can say, okay, let's work together on this and let's find solutions. And there's so many things that we've been able to create really well together, because that's where we focus our intention, and we don't throw the whole relationship out because we may have differing points of view on whatever the other topics are.
That's all very powerful. It makes me think of a dear friend of mine who passed away in December, who was a energy healer.
Mm-hmm.
She would start every conversation with what's good right now.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
I still hear her in my head.
I would love to share that with others. Do you feel comfortable sharing her name, or do you feel like she's okay for us to
Stephanie.
use that? Stephanie?
Hey, Stephanie. Yep.
All right. Well, we're going to say thank you to Stephanie for giving us that beautiful
She would
gem.
love that. She would actually love that.
Say it again. What's good in this moment right now?
What's good right now?
What's good right now? Beautiful.
Yeah.
4 words. What's good right now?
Yeah. And she would just start with that before anybody can get into anything. Or if you started to complain about something or gripe, she'd stop you immediately and say, she'd go, what's good right now?
Beautiful.
And she was a radio DJ, so she had the most amazing voice.
Thank you for sharing that, Donna.
Yeah. It's like a pattern interrupt, because it makes you think like, okay, perspective. Maybe this matters.
I think this goes back to what we were talking about, like in school and in other areas of our life. I think we've often been taught to focus on where we need to do better.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're constantly trained to look for what's not working. What is it that I need to do better? And that pattern interrupt is saying, okay, let me look right now, what's good right now, so that you can make that shift and focus on what is working and build upon that. That's really powerful.
Yeah, it really is. And simple. Her greatest joy was teaching this to children.
Was she in New York?
Connecticut.
In Connecticut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's a special person.
I think teaching our children these really important concepts from the beginning is what will heal our world.
I agree. I've got a 24-year-old, and that was why I quit my job. He was 4 when I quit my job and started a business, because I wanted to be there, and I wanted to know his friends, and I wanted to be part of his upbringing, and that wasn't possible with the job that I had. And he would not be who he is today if I didn't do that.
And look at the beautiful ripples that you've created in the world by the path that you've chosen, both with him and out within the greater world.
Yeah, none of this would have been possible in my job.
Exactly.
I mean, it was built on institutional shame and blame.
Well, that's where the work is that I'm focused on right now, because one of the things that the professor said right at the end of the program is right now there's a big gap between what the research shows and what's happening in corporate America. And that's why a lot of my work is focused on being able to help us shift corporate culture from being toxic and uncivil to being really vibrant, healthy places for us to engage. And often when we can learn that in one area of our life, we'll take it then and take it over into the other areas of our life. So the more that we can help executives and teams to understand the power of high relational intelligence, that not only will it benefit their organization, that it'll also ripple out into the greater world.
Yeah.
And then while at the same time being able to have podcasts and live streams and things such as this to be able to help everyone to understand that these relationships don't have to be as hard as what we make them.
No.
And down the road, we're going to create a children's book line and a teen book line and some card games to help people. My son's actually developing an online app right now to help people with their relationships. And again, it's just, what can we do at this point in time, right? To be able to be part of the solution, part of healing, part of being the bright spots, just like Stephanie is, clearly how she was in her life that was here. And it's even rippling on beyond her being here on earth, is it's that beauty of the goodness. How can we raise that bar from from forcefulness up into the power of the beauty of connection, of the beauty of happiness? David Brooks says that human connections are the key to happiness, right? So how can we connect in ways that fill our soul and helps the other person we're connecting with to have a positive experience, so that their soul can be fulfilled as well?
There needs to be a lot of healing happening because there are a lot of people that are broken.
Mm-hmm.
And, were not loved properly as a child. And that carries forward.
It does, generationally. And sometimes we can be the pattern interrupt, right? Like you were saying.
Yeah.
What's good right now can be the pattern interrupt. Like, how can we be the pattern interrupt to that generational trauma, to that generational, just the ways that have been passed down, just as because the people around us, that's what they knew and they did the best they could with what they had.
Yeah.
Because we're all in the fullness of and wholeness of our human experience,
Yeah.
right? Just because we know better doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to be able to do better, depending on where we're at in that moment of our lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, being able to accept this is where each other is at right now. And even, for example, someone that is having challenges in really stepping into what they know to do better. And sometimes that's even me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is being able to have accepting each other with agreements, to be able to say, okay, if I'm going to make this choice, then we put both ends of it in. Here's the agreement. Here's the agreement, and we put both ends into place.
Mm-hmm.
If we agree that this is going to happen, that this is what the agreement is around. If it happens, then this happens, and if it doesn't happen, then this happens. Because then the agreement can hold the container, and we don't have to get so upset because we agreed ahead of time that we would both be okay.
Mm-hmm.
That if you choose to do this, then that. So, and even if it's something like having challenges with alcohol or whatever, screen time or whatever, is that if you choose not to do, let's just say not to drink or not to do whatever it is, I will make myself fully available to you. If
Mm-hmm.
you choose to do that, I will not be fully available to you.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't.
And that's the accountability piece, and it brings cause and effect. So, then you have to, that's another pattern interrupt right there, because then you think, oh, if I do this, then this is the consequence. But without that stated beforehand, that's all very vague. Could be anything.
Well, because then it becomes just these expectations, right? Yeah. And that was a great question that came up in one of the workshops I did last week, is about how do you navigate expectations? Let's say, for example, at work, there's an expectation that this happens in the workplace. Well, we can have all these expectations. However, when we get them over into agreement form, then we're speaking the same language,
Mm-hmm.
right? When it's just an expectation form, one person's interpretation may be different than the other person's.
Yeah. And that there's no solidity to it at all. It could change from moment to moment.
Exactly.
This has been a great conversation. And just before we wrap up, to bring this back to where we started, to AI, these are the same things that I teach people to bring into AI. You go into this relationship with your tools.
Mm-hmm.
You go into this relationship with your content. And it's not different.
No, it's what you put in is what you're going to get out.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. I love talking to you. I could do this all day long.
I feel the same, Donna. Thank you so much.
But we cannot. So I'm going to flash your website up here. And the way I like to close out these interviews is with a wisdom bomb, something small and actionable. It could be something you've already said because you've dropped quite a few. That we can start to put out into the world the way Stephanie's phrase is out there in the world. So people will come to know you for this thing.
Well, thank you for the invitation to share. I think the biggest wisdom bomb came from a friend of mine, June Dillinger, and she coined the term many years ago, making love visible. And at this point in time, I ask myself every day, how can I make love visible today?
Mm-hmm.
And in the moments when it's really hard, how can I make love visible? How can I be love in this moment? And I think it's through that that we can start to do the healing and be that safe space for someone else as they're healing. So how can I make love visible today?
I don't
And
know.
part of it, I think, is through this beautiful conversation that we've had. So thank you for that.
That is my desire for each one of these conversations is I don't look to go viral, but the people that need to hear them, that they find them when they need them.
Beautiful.
And thank you so much for joining me, for sharing your wisdom and all of the things that you do. Your work is incredibly important, and let's get more people to know about you.
Thank you very much, Donna. Thank you for being the light you are in the world and giving individuals such as myself to come along beside you in sharing the work that we're doing.
It's my absolute pleasure. This is my favorite hour of the week.
Beautiful.
Have a great Wednesday, everybody. August is a little slow, and I'm going on jury duty, so this is our only interview for the month. But we do have a meet and mingle on the last Wednesday of the month, and we're booked all the way through the end of the year, so lots more to come. Have a great Wednesday, and again, thank you, Laurie. Please connect with her. Her website is alignedinsightsmatter.com, and she's also active on LinkedIn. And you know if you have any comments, ideas, thoughts, tag us and we will come back and keep this conversation going. And I'll see you in September.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.